Hello and welcome to the 2021 version of the Out to Lunch Festival. I refuse to call this the new normal, by the way. This is not the new normal. This is the new temporary, and it will be over soon, as long as people do what they're told. The person I am going to introduce and talk to, and have the pleasure to talk to, I looked him up on Wikipedia, and apparently it says he's a comedian, podcaster, actor, writer, and newly crowned Taskmaster winner, or is that a spoiler? Mr. Richard Herring, ladies and gentlemen.
Hello, how are you doing, Colin? Nice to see you.
I'm very well. Yes, that was a bit of a spoiler for me because we haven't caught up with.
Oh, we not? Yeah.
The final one, so I've just ruined it for myself.
Well, it's still very exciting. I think you'll still enjoy it, even if you know the result. It's a very exciting.
Oh well, that's good. I was going to do the obligatory chat that you have to do in all of these things now about how's lockdown treating you? But it doesn't seem to have affected you. You seem to be as busy and as obsessed with things as ever.
Well, in some ways, it's going better. My acting career seems to have taken off somehow, even though we're not allowed to go out. I seem to be going out and doing some acting. Because I've always done loads online. Although I was meant to be doing lots of live podcasts in 2020, I managed to do a lot of it online, and then I've added extra stuff that I've been doing quite a lot of esoteric, weird podcasts about clearing stones off fields and playing snooker against myself, which I've been doing for quite a while, but they suit lockdown quite a lot. So certainly in the first lockdown, I've got a new Twitch channel, which is why I've got quite a nice setup of audio and video here. And so I can broadcast live. So it's like having your own TV station, and I can do whatever nonsense I want. So I've become a ventriloquist. I'm doing ventriloquism.
Yes, you do newspaper review.
Well, I'll do a newspaper review with my great granddad Thomas Herring made a ventriloquist dummy. I mean, I've seen it on video. I'll show you here. This is the main dummy. It's slightly terrifying.
Oh, that's not scary at all. No, that's.
And his hair does this. There you go. So, hello, it's me, Ali. How you doing? Nice to be here in Belfast. Live with magic. Oh, television. It's not television, Ali. Oh, sorry. So I've been doing that, which is really good fun. I just sort of decided, it came up in the snooker somehow, and then I thought, it'd be interesting to see whether I can do ventriloquism without really training. I've been doing it every week, and then loads of other characters. This is a carrot that looks like a penis. That's a character. There's a dead wasp that's a character. I don't know if I can find him. He's disappeared, I think. So just whatever. So I'm going slightly crazy in my attic. But yeah, it's been... Luckily with Taskmaster, I'd recorded all my tasks beforehand. The other team had to do a few post-lockdown. And then we managed to fit in the studios at the end of July once the first lockdown was over. And now it seems TV and film are allowed, there's exemptions made for them, so they're allowed to, as long as you're tested and then in a bubble, you're allowed to do stuff. So I've done it. Last year, I mean, at the start of 2020, when I knew I was doing Taskmaster, I was interviewing Sir Michael Palin on my podcast, which luckily was the only one we managed to do live. And it just felt like everything was moving in an exciting direction. And then, but luckily, most of it I managed to pick up one way or the other. So I've done a bit of acting and doing.
You squeezed the book in the middle.
And I wrote a book as well. Yeah, that's what we're talking about. I've forgotten about that. Yeah, so I wrote the book again. I've been commissioned to write the book beforehand, but again and it was really hard because obviously I've got two young kids, 5 and nearly 6 and 3, or he turned 3 during lockdown. So I've had to be looking after them and homeschooling, and it was very hard to write the book. Obviously splitting it with my wife, so it's and luckily she sort of took the brunt of it for a month while I finished off the book. But but it was actually the lockdown sort of informed the book quite a lot. So I'd been commissioned to write it beforehand, and a lot of these things were happening beforehand. So it looked, like as I say, 2020 looked. This might be every now and I've been going for 30 years, and every now and again you have a year where you go, it looks like something's happening now, and then there's a lull again, and then it picks up again. And luckily I've sort of remained fairly constantly in the middle all through those 30 years without going too far down or too far up. But it felt like 2020 was going to be a good year. But it's turned out to be okay, and I've enjoyed being with the family more because obviously I've not been out doing gigs. It's great to be... For me, I love doing stuff like this rather than getting a plane and doing this live. It's sort of, in terms of family, it's so much... easier and nice. So it's more the like newspaper interviews and PR interviews and things like that you usually have to. I live in Hertfordshire now. You usually have to drive into London or get a train into London, and it takes the whole day. And just being able to come up to your attic and knock off an interview with Radio 5 or whoever for 15 minutes just sort of is great. So I think there's lots of positives to take out of it. And obviously in stand-up comedy terms and live comedy terms, there's a hell of a lot of negatives. But I hope that both the people who run the gigs and people who are in the gigs will kind of learn the lessons. I was just lucky that I had this online presence already. So I've been I've been able to carry on, and my main podcast, the Rahalister podcast, has ads in it and stuff, so that's been creating revenue. Oh, so I've been really lucky to keep my head above water as all this is going on. But yeah, I think there's lots of positives, but it's obviously been pretty hellish for any stand-ups who are just stand-ups, which you would think was a perfectly safe thing to be, and then suddenly that rug pulled from out under their feet. So I'm hoping we'll learn the lesson.
You just mentioned something there. You just did. I didn't realize you did it in real life. Is the acronym that you use?
Oh yes, I do. Yes, yeah.
Because well, it used to in my extensive research in Wikipedia, it's very funny. Your Wikipedia entry is incredibly articulate. Whoever wrote it, I'm thinking you.
I do occasionally correct it, but I didn't write the body of it. But if there's a mistake in there, I will go. But I never put anything other than facts in there. They sometimes get.
But it mentions. Your tropes and motifs. I've never seen comedians' Wikipedia entry that mentions tropes and motifs. And one of them is the acronyms. And the other ones, I loved the other ones. I read them out to my wife. She's killed herself laughing. Was the acronym thing. And the others, I'm reading it off here. The others are adding unnecessary S's to things.
Yes.
Like John Majors.
Yeah, so that dates it. But John Majors.
Using the name Ian as the fictional director of a company like Ian Starbucks.
Yeah.
It's my particular favourite. And
it works very well, except for Greg's, which is owned by Ian Greggs. So that's the only one that really is. But Ian Apple, Ian Amazon, all that. Yeah,
that's what I thought as well. Because I grew up in a small town, and in Ireland, shops are named after the people that own them. So I've always thought that. Do you know what I mean? The Currys. I'm going down to Currys. All right. It could be. I never thought it had a first name. So Ian Currys.
Ian Currys.
Yeah.
That does both of them.
Yeah. It's but the stone thing, are you doing that every single day?
No, I did during lockdown. I did do it sort of on weekdays most days, and it got. Could you explain
sorry to people who maybe don't know what it is. Sorry,
I mean, it's hard to explain. I walked my dog around. I walked my dog around a big field. It's a 37-acre field, and there are stones all over it. And I think there's a human. And not just humans, animals do it as well. There's sort of a compulsion to sort of slightly order things and build cairns and that sort of stuff. So I just sort of idly started chucking stones off the field onto cairns, and then I sort of thought, well, I might be walking this dog for 30 years. If I do this every dog walk, this was before I even started podcasting it, maybe I can clear all the stones off this 37-acre field. It's a very stony field. There's at least 1 billion stones on it. And I'm not going to be able to do it. But then I thought there's an interesting podcast in that for lots of ideas, lots of reasons. It's sort of a parody of how boring podcasts could be, but also it's about the human condition. It's about man trying to order nature. It's about just also things do happen, and it's an improvised podcast, obviously, because I just have to talk for 45 minutes as I'm walking around a field about the same thing, and then so it's developed into this sort of paranoid thing where I'm worried that I'll be discovered by people in the village. I'm trying to keep it secret even though I'm podcasting it. But so then all you start hallucinating a little bit as well. So some of it's real, and I start seeing. I thought I saw a Morlock one day walking around the field, and it's about a lot of my stuff's about. Skirting around mental illness and playing with mental illness and the line between sanity and insanity and how blurred that is. And I think as a comedian, you're always playing a bit with that anyway, because you're artificially creating a sort of crazier version of yourself than you really would be. So in lockdown, because with Twitch, I suddenly realised I could use my phone and film it. It had always been an audio thing, which again, I like the idea of this. But it was initially like the idea, this is, if you want to be a stone clearer, I will teach you how to be a stone clearer. Here's the lessons on how to pick up stones and get them off the field. So it's a very limited thing. But I've been doing this with the self-playing snooker for a long time as well. Just when you actually closing the boundaries so far that there's hardly anywhere to go. You have to be very inventive to try and make it interesting. So it's and with Twitch, I've started doing a lot more improvised stuff. But yeah, so every morning, like Joe Wicks, I was Joe Wicks, but doing stone clearing, and about 200 people. Well, it's more than that because people would dip in and out, but there was always about 200 people watching it live. So there's 200 people around the world watching me clear stones on Twitch, and then it goes up as a video, and then they can watch it on Twitch as well. So, a few thousand people were watching this. And then it just got a bit much, and it sort of got a little bit weird with people got too involved. Obviously, it's fairly anonymous where I am, but people were trying to work out where I lived and like looking at landmarks and trying to work out where I was and stuff. And it just got a little. And I think the people doing it were fans who were just joining in with the fun of it, but it just started to feel a little bit too much. So I still do it occasionally, and I don't really, if people want to, as a comedian, if people want to find you, you put where you are on a website. So if they want to get you and punch you or whatever they want to do to you, they can find you. So I'm not too worried about that, but obviously once it's your home, it feels a little bit more intrusive. But yeah, I do it sort of weekly. I do a weekly audio one, and if I've got time, I do a weekly video one as well, but it's a very shaky or handheld, me on my phone doing this, so it's and it's not great quality, so people get annoyed with it. It's like I'm in a war zone. Sometimes when it's very muddy, it is like a war zone. But
these activities, I think, right, the stone clearing, the playing snooker with yourself, the number plate challenge that you had, all of these things are really male traits. They're really, only men think up these things that are pointless to everyone else, but to them they're important, and then create a set of rules around them.
Yeah, it is. I guess it is more of a male thing. I think, it's, but it's upset. I've always been interested in obsession. All the early stuff that we wrote was very obsessive characters, trying to maintain lies or just really getting involved with something. And I think there's something obviously within a lot of us. There's definitely something within me. I took a test to see if I was autistic, and it came back that I was not autistic. So I don't know what you have to do to be autistic these days, but it's harder than I thought. But because I am very obsessive. But it's also interesting with all those things how you create a belief system around something. So when I was doing the number plate thing, I almost started believing that there were gods controlling it, because sometimes I was trying to spot every number plate from 1 to 999, which was the old number plate system but in order in the UK, and sometimes you'd see 4 or 5 suddenly in a row, and then you'd go for 3 weeks without seeing one, and so you started praying, or you sort of started seeing little patterns that weren't there that would lead you to get your next one. And that's what the stone clearing is very like. The stone clearing has created this almost messianic religion in which I've sort of created a history of it, and there are certain things I have to do as I go around, otherwise I had a ditch that stopped Brexit, which was very effective. And that's why we don't have Brexit now, because I put a stone in that ditch every time I went past it. And it got Dominic Cummings sacked eventually as well, so there you go. Well, he didn't quite get sacked, but it worked eventually. You have to believe. So it's about beliefs, and it's about superstition and religious feelings, and it's amazing. You can make a religion about anything, and all you need is and cults about anything, and it's very current, weirdly, because what's happening in America is this crazy cult where people are believing the opposite of the truth, and won't be shaken from it. However crazy what they're thinking is, and it's terrifying. But I suppose I'm sort of slightly parodying or pushing along on that with these things. But yeah, it's about. I've always found like obsession funny. I've found like tedium funny, and I think as a comedian, it's really interesting to try and make it. Both of those podcasts are sort of meant to be slightly boring. With the snooker, I initially just wanted to lose all the listeners. I wanted to try and do a podcast that no one listened to. So it started with 30,000 listeners, but I haven't been able to shift the last. About 5,000 people tune in every week, and I can't shift them. And it's getting. But then in lockdown, I created. It was me one versus me two in audio. But in lockdown, I started doing tournaments with 16, then 32. There's now 40 different characters that are all me. Right. And so it's become more of a. And it got on the BBC. I did a little sketch of it on the BBC. Filmed a film for the BBC, so it's sort of weirdly again gone sort of mainstream as a result of it. But I also think with his
performance art piece,
I've been in it. It's been in a festival of transgressive art. So I took it to I was asked by a festival of transgressive art. Everyone else was nailing their genitals to pieces of wood and mainly some stuff with genitals.
Why is that always the go-to thing?
It's mainly stuff. Someone was producing baby teeth out of a vagina.
Yeah.
Someone was lip syncing with a vagina, and I was playing snooker against myself. And I did 5 frames, and I'm commentating on it as I go, and that's it. And then quite a few of the transgressive artists walked out, which I thought was quite good, that I was too transgressive for the transgressive artists. So it, but I do see both of these as slightly as art pieces as well, and I know that I won't be up for the Turner Prize, but you sort of should be. There's something in this stone clearing of a man trying to, you're trying to leave something yourself behind. I'm trying to make a wall that's visible from space. That's my ultimate aim, that we remembered, in hundreds of thousands of years' time. But there's something about trying to leave your mark, and the futility of that is about and when I was doing the one, walking around and talking to people on Twitch, you sort of go, well, is this any more futile than what you're doing, than your usual daily job? We're all doing stuff that has no real impact on mine. I might create something that's here in 100, 200, 300 years' time. So
the one thing that leads into the book is the one thing that the big impact that you made is the reaction to, men's reaction to International Women's Day.
Yeah. So yeah, that's
become a bane of your life rather
than it did become a bane, but again, it was the same impetus. So I think again, and it's a very similar thing in that it's finding a joke. So basically, to sum up where it started. I just noticed on Twitter about 10 years ago that on International Women's Day, you'd get a lot of men going, when's International Men's Day? Oh, I suppose that wouldn't be allowed because of political correctness. And not only did loads of people do it, as they're all thinking they're being hilarious, making this point, lots of people do it. But the main point is there is an International Men's Day, and it's on November the 19th. So I would just find those. To begin with, I just started replying to a few people going, "Oh, it's November the 19th," and they don't go "Thank you" because obviously they didn't want there to be an International Men's Day because it ruins their hilarious joke. And then when I started searching and realised how many people did it, I sort of started replying to all of them. And so over a couple of years, it became more and more intense and more of a thing. But so the whole of that March the 8th was me just going on Twitter, searching for International Men's Day, all the apostrophes wrong, and finding everyone who did it. And then just my stream being constant, like November the 19th, with some embellishments. So because sometimes I would, it wasn't like a bot thing where I could have just set up a reply because I wanted to do sort of tailored replies to people as well. So, and it's like this King Canute, me attempting to turn back this tide of idiots, but it being, over the 10 years I did it got worse, if anything, it didn't make any difference. So it's the same impetus of me trying to clear a field of stones that's impossible to clear, is me just trying to let everyone know there is an International Men's Day. And that in itself was enough to begin with. I just thought, this is funny. People sort of enjoyed it. They knew it was coming up every year and people would enjoy the joke was on the people doing it, but then the joke was quickly on me because obviously I'd set myself this impossible task. Yeah. And I'd get genuinely upset and and frightened and bored and angry. So again, it was skirting around with that, what you can do to yourself mentally. And I sort of have I'm a very persistent person. I'm a dog with a bone and I won't let things go. I don't think many people could have done it to the extent that other people do a similar thing, but I don't think anyone did it quite as intensively as I did.
Did it scare you sometimes at the beginning when you looked at some of the reactions? Because, loads of the guys just sort of go away in a hump, but some of them argue back.
Well, not very many. Hardly any respond at all. So no, I've had about 3 thank yous from people who go, "Oh, thank you, I didn't know there was one," as if that was the point, but obviously it wasn't. They could just Google it. Why don't you Google it just before you do the joke, just to check? Actually, more recently, it's become, not unsurprisingly, it's become worse because the world has become a terrible place. Yeah. So it was almost like, I make this point in the book, but it's almost like though it was the sort of soft drug. Men asking when's International Men's Day was the soft drug that's led on to where we are now, with people going, "What? But all lives matter, blue lives matter, white lives matter." and not understanding the reason for that. It's not understanding why you would have an International Women's Day anyway, and why there might be more of a need for an International Women's Day. But it doesn't matter if you don't think there is. So it's this sort of this kickback, isn't it, that people have now that they're making themselves the victim. So they're going, but there's an International Women's Day. Why isn't there an International Men's Day? There's no. I thought it was equality, but you don't understand equality. You don't have an International Slavery Day and an International Slavers Day, because you don't want one of those things.
Yeah.
So that's not how equality works. Everything doesn't have to be, you're trying to level the playing field as much as possible in those different ways. So the reason you have a Black History Month is because we're not taught Black history. So you don't have a White History Month because we are taught white history. So, you would think that was obvious. But it's... So, there's some threatening ones. I put some in the book of people like threatening to come and get you. But, I think as a comedian, you always get that anyway. And I just think, if somebody... It's the same thing. If someone's going to come and get you, they're not going to tweet you and tell you, I'm going to come and get you. You can come and get... If you want to get someone, you can get someone.
It was this thing here always, when we were ever interviewed, if you were a comedian in Belfast and during the Troubles, journalists, especially English journalists, would say, do you ever worry about reactions to some of the things you say? And you go, well, it's a comedian. I'm telling a joke. It's not going to, you've never ever going to hear the headline, an off-duty comedian was found shot dead today. It's not,
well, you never know, but you can't let it affect you, and there's places around the world where it really, where you can't tell jokes. And so we luckily at the moment, and hopefully we will be able to continue to make jokes. It doesn't mean you're free of, you can say whatever you want. People don't really understand what free speech means. There's consequences to free speech, and you have to think about those things. But hopefully we live in a world where you can make jokes, and hopefully, you're winding people up. And I think you are sort of making people look foolish. And I would like to get at, but also yourself. I'm making myself look foolish as well. But I'd like to get back to the point of the world where, when people were made to look foolish, they went, oh, fuck, I better shut up then.
Yeah.
Because at the moment, we're at a point where you look foolish and go, no, I'm going to double down and say I'm definitely right. So, so it was interesting. And part of the reason I decided last year to make the last year I did it, which was difficult because I'd never thought of raising money for charity with it. And someone, like about 4 or 5 years ago, someone said, why don't you get sponsored for charity? And I sort of idly did it one year and for Refuge, because I thought it was nice to turn this kind of male idiocy into something positive to make up for other worse examples of masculinity. Even though I did it quite idly, the Refuge got in touch and said, well, we made about 15 grand more than usual this year. I went, oh, okay. And so the next year I did it pretty seriously, and it suddenly was, I think it made, the first year it was because I've been doing it for so long and people enjoyed it so much and they understood that it was a bit of a task. I was suddenly getting sort of £10,000 an hour doing this thing, which, so I think the first year it raised something like 150 grand, and then the next year it is 75 grand, and it was over 100. It's been over 300 grand in the last 3 years anyway, well over 300, maybe 300 or 400 grand, and maybe 500 including gift aid and all that sort of stuff. Yeah. So it's, it was difficult to give up because you go, it's suddenly got, because the part of it was, the point of it was it didn't have a purpose, that it was just a self-defeating, stupid thing to do. But it actually I think it gave it a longer life for me, because I thought, well, actually, most years I would feel quite broken, genuinely a bit broken and a bit sad and a bit, it was a hard thing to do. But the year that we raised 150 grand, it was kind of hard. I went for dinner with my wife and we kind of went, wow, this is, it's that sort of worth 12 hours, 15 hours of feeling a bit upset. So that's
the whole thing. So in the book, it was I got the audiobook, by the way.
Oh, good. It's good. I think it's the best way to enjoy it.
Especially when it's someone that is a performer.
Yeah,
I always get the audiobook if it's a performer. If it's an actor reading the book, nah.
Yeah.
But if it's a performer who's reading their own work, that's always good. And there were extra little asides in it. I don't know if they were actually in the book, and you just performed them very, very well.
Some of them,
which is probably why you're such demand as an actor.
There are some extra bits in the audio, but that aren't in. That are like the extra bit in the Serena Williams chapter where I have the argument with someone about whether that's an extra bit that isn't in the book.
The Serena Williams bit, by the way, is my favourite bit.
Me too. I think that's the sort
it describes a certain type of man.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, a large group of men.
Well, about a quarter of men. So, the statistic is, about 25% of men, think they could or might be able to take a point off Serena Williams in a game of tennis. And believe me, the number of people who still, they read the chapter and they still argue. It's basically, 40 points or something. It's 42 points or something, maybe 48 points for her to win a 2-set match. And they go, well, she would serve a double fault. And you go, no, she wouldn't serve a double fault against you, mate. Because she wouldn't have to hit it very hard again. And there's, you can show people there's evidence of guys trying to take a point off her and how bad they are, and they're athletic guys. So the idea of someone like me thinking, yeah, I reckon Serena will. And my favourite bit of that extra bit was a guy saying, well, I'm not that good at tennis, but I could run around. I'm really fast. I could run around, and I confuse. Like no one's ever thought. Serena Williams going, oh fuck. What am I going to do? This guy's moving around the court. Well, I've never experienced this in all my years of playing professional tennis. So it's sort of it's about male overconfidence, and we're about a small percentage of women still think they do it, and obviously a very small percentage of men would be able to take a point off Serena Williams.
Yeah,
but most people couldn't. So
it's the confidence. It's the absolute self-confidence. And it's also the reason why I think loads of men genuinely wear football jerseys to go and watch football matches, because they think there's a possibility they might be called on. Yeah,
well, exactly. And that same guy said he thought, it's snooker or darts, he'd be able to get points. He said, and football. So he thinks if he was playing in a professional football match, he would score a goal in professional football, which is absolutely insane. In darts, you'd probably score some points because you get a go.
Yeah.
But I think in snooker, you probably wouldn't, unless you played a lot of snooker. You'd give away a lot of points. You might chance to get a red in, but you're playing someone great. They'll just go boom, 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 boom. So it's about overestimating themselves and underestimating other people, and it's part of the reason men do so well, because they have that overconfidence compared to women who traditionally don't. Weirdly, in Taskmaster, Daisy May Cooper is the most confident person I've ever met. And it's really rare to see that in a woman, and it's wonderful to see it in a woman, but it's still insane. There was a point where she drew a picture of a hippo, and went insane at me for not recognising this thing that looked nothing like a hippo. It was my fault, and that's very male behaviour. And hats off to her. She's terrifying. I think we're friends, but I'm not sure. So
that was genuine when she got really angry.
Yeah, she was furious. I mean, she was 8 months pregnant or something, so I think there may have been some hormonal issues in there as well. But yeah, she was. But she absolutely had she believed everything she did was great, and it's sort of great. If we could all have that, it would sort of be okay, but also it would be terrible as well. It's about just being realistic and and understanding that you're not the centre of the planet, which I think is very hard for all humans to understand, that we're not the star of the film. That we all think, well, I from your point of view, you're the star of the film and everything's about you, but from the broader perspective, we're all just little cogs, and everything we do is as meaningless as moving stones off a field.
In the book you were saying that you came across the vagina monologues. Was it in Edinburgh? Was being performed the first time you'd heard about it?
It was in London. Yeah, I was sharing a bill. I was sharing a bill with the Arts Theatre before I used to go to Leicester Square Theatre. So I was doing Christ on a Bike, and I was following the vagina monologues. Yeah, and the vagina monologues was always packed. And you
sort of had that reaction though, almost.
Yeah. Well, yeah, but lots of people. I would come in the bar, and there'd been 50 people seeing me, and I could talk to most of them, and I'd watch the vagina monologues, all these women spilling out, and people would say to me, why don't you do a male version of that? And I go, because it would be shit, and because it's such an obvious idea, and but then I did start thinking about why no one had done it, and I kind of realised it was because the men talk about nothing but their penises, and I'm, certainly a good example of that.
Yeah.
But they actually don't talk about any of it seriously. So I sort of realised there was a way of doing it. But yeah, I did. Essentially, it was the same sort of motivation, but I think I kind of thought a little bit more about it and thought, what's the problem? I think it was very much a precursor to this book, because it was about men not being able to talk about stuff, and this book is the problem with men is very much it sounds like it's quite a confrontational title, but I think men are the main victims of this sort of macho and behaviour. We don't discuss our feelings, and we've been sort of taught not to discuss our feelings, and we're no different than women in. I think a lot of it's a societal and cultural pressure. I'm not saying men and women are exactly the same, but I think there's such a spectrum of gender, and we're understanding that a lot more now. That the idea of saying every man could beat Serena Williams at tennis because all men are stronger than women, that doesn't add up. In general, men are stronger than women, but Serena Williams is stronger than you or I. And could smash us in the face and kill us. Yeah. So it's not. It's about, I think men, we're our own worst enemies. We sort of stand up. We actually protect the patriarchy, because whereas most of us suffer from the patriarchy, the patriarchy is helping a very small percentage of men and putting them in a position, and yet most men, out of any group, if you went to women and said all women are like this, if you went to black people and said all black people are like this, you would get in a terrible trouble. People would be furious with you. If you go to men and go, yeah, the thing with men with like this, they're like this, we're like this and this, and most men go, yeah, we are, that's true, and we're the only people who sort of embrace the stereotype and almost try to live up to it. And I just think, personally speaking, I'm not. I don't recognise myself in most of the cliches of masculinity, and I think, and I'm, I guess as comedians, you do end up talking about your feelings a bit more. You do end up discussing the worst and most stupid things you've done. But with Talking Cock, I realised that's all you needed to do it with humour and to talk openly. That's as I talk about in the book. There's a guy who. One of the gigs, this very big macho tattooed guy came back into the auditorium looking for his cigarettes, and then said, oh, that bit about ripping the frenulum, which is a part of the penis injury thing, I thought I was the only person that had ever happened to. He'd never talked about it, and he'd been so reassured to hear someone discussing that issue. And I found that again and again with Talking Cock, especially the number of things that people have been harbouring, like been upset and devastated, depressed about tiny things that actually happen to everyone, but because we don't talk about them, they think they're the only one. And again, I think a lot of this stuff is why the Western world's in the mess it is at the moment, because
Trump's like the most ultimate toxic masculinity example.
Well, he can't be right. Like the thing is, to be a man, you watch John McCain. Exceeding that he's been defeated. To Barack Obama, and it's the most dignified and actually manly thing you've ever seen. And you see Trump refuse like a fucking baby, and that's what. And I think that's what this. At the centre of all this is. It's when's International Men's Day is like going. Why is it not my birthday? Why are you having a birthday? When's my birthday? You have a birthday, but you're getting upset about somebody else having a birthday because you're not the centre of attention. And it's that babyishness that Trump absolutely exemplifies. And it's not, it's comedic, but then it's not comedic, is it? Because it leads to absolutely terrible, tragic consequences. So,
but these macho guys that you see at all of the rallies and last week at the Capitol building, and they're so macho. They are like cartoon macho men, and they see him as some sort of father figure, and you look at him, really? That orange buffoon?
But it's the same, Hitler was the same. Hitler was this master race. You look at Hitler and you go, what the hell what are you talking about? But him. But also, they're all dressed. They're dressed up as like avatars. They're not like it's.
What's the obsession with military and army and camouflage and they want camouflage to not be seen, but yet they want to be seen and heard.
But so it's nuts. But I think a lot of it comes from just not talking openly, bottling up your feelings, and the minute you and not being, I know, and I'm competitive, and I find it very difficult to lose stupid, trivial things. I have to say, I'm quite good in real life, but I'm playing games and stuff. I find it hard to lose, and I think this is again, you're taught that this has to be the way. You're taught that it's humiliating to lose, but it isn't. It's not humiliating to lose. It doesn't need to be. If you act with dignity and then you'll be a more impressive person. But this idea of never being wrong, but it's and it's not just it is sort of both sides of nearly every argument now. Is this refusal to compromise, this refusal to admit that you might be wrong about anything, that everyone has to agree with everything you think or they're not on your side. And that's a dangerous thing. So, but again, I think that's what this is about. It's about understanding that male equality and female equality are actually the same thing. So if females are aiming for equality and you're worried about male equality, worry no more, because you're actually aiming for the same thing. So the idea of you fighting each other, the idea of women fighting men trying to get equality and men fighting women trying to get equality is nuts. We've got to realise where the common ground lies, and how I think actually an equal society would really benefit all of those men we're talking about. I mean, not Donald Trump, but it would all those guys who are furiously. I think the guys in the Trafalgar Square one, when they were going to protect Winston Churchill, and they obviously didn't know what they couldn't quite work out what they were doing, so they were doing Hitler salutes, they were weeing on war memorials, they were trying to fight the police, they were trying to fight each other, they didn't know, they had all this pent up anger and they didn't know where it was meant to go. And I kind of realized I felt sorry for those guys, because they're directionless, and they're all the things they've been brought up to believe are being challenged, and they don't know what to do. And actually those guys are the guys who would benefit from an equal society, because of course not all men live in, have a wonderful life. Not all, men do something. You can find plenty of examples of where society is unequal for men, or where men are in more danger or whatever of death or injury. But that's not it's not, the answer isn't to go, oh, women aren't equal here, but men aren't equal here. It's go, let's work out together how we can make all of those things go away.
What do you think? What do you think's the best thing about being a man? Because lots of the book deals with the worst part of men. But what's the best thing about being a man? What do you like about being a man?
Being a human is a great thing. Being alive is a great thing. We're all so privileged. I don't think it matters how you identify. I just don't. I don't think. I think the idea of, having to say, oh, we're in two camps and whatever. I think the great thing about this sort of fluidity of gender is it will help people to understand that they don't have to be at the extreme. So I think being a man is just about being a human and using what we have as men to if we are stronger, then use our strength to help other people rather than to create disaster. If we're funny, then let's use our funniness. I don't think I have many of the kind of aspects that you would say were manly, in a traditional sense. But I think I want to be a good dad. I want to be there for my family. I want to be there for my wife. I think these are all great things about being a man. I think just using what you have to make the world better as much as you can, or make your family better, whichever impetus you have. I think it's more about that. So I don't I think. We're just so lucky, I think, to be alive at this point, even though the world's all messed up, where we have so much, where we have, like, comparative to most of humanity and most life on Earth, we live in a golden period where we have reasonable comfort, and we've kind of cracked so much. When you see how far technology's got on and how far human understanding's got on. So I think... I think humanity has to come together and let people be what they're good at. I think at the moment we're in danger of letting idiots rule the world and decrying people who are clever, and not making the most of whatever your own personal skills are. So if you aren't an expert on the coronavirus, don't try and do that. Do the thing. Don't sort of guess what you think the coronavirus is. But you will have skills that will help people in other ways. And I think the coronavirus is a perfect example of that, because we either pull apart or we come together, and we can all help each other. So whatever your job is, with stand-ups, like we were saying, I was so worried about the stand-up community. I felt like it was really important to do work in terms of helping everyone else through that. So whatever your job is, if you're doing okay, or if you have a skill, use that to help people, rather than trying to pull things apart or try and just I mean, the biggest problem with the thought is the idea of people thinking common sense can get you through like complicated things, because economies and the viruses and what do not operate on common sense, and so you can't go, well, I've never, no one I know has had the coronavirus, so it doesn't exist. That's not common sense. That's the Serena Williams thing again. Because it's generally, when you go on social media,
it is, I'd say probably 8 out of 10 of those would be men saying, well, Chris Whitty knows nothing, they don't know. No, what you got to do is, it's just, if these were pubs, you wouldn't go into them. Do you know what I mean?
But I think it's, I was going to say it comes with age, but unfortunately a lot of, you see so many middle-aged men are the absolute worst.
They are the worst.
But in a terrifying way, I kind of think, when's the day you wake up and suddenly think, oh, actually, I believe the conspiracy theories, and we've seen it. I think again with comedians, you see, but you've seen a lot go that way. But I think again, it's about men thinking they have to be powerful, and it's about men not being able to cope with, that sort of what they see as humiliation of getting older and losing their power, so they feel they have to make waves in a different way. And I think it's, if we can get to the point where we are teaching our young boys that it's okay to lose, and it's okay to feel, and it's okay to cry, and it's okay to talk, then I think we'll find in 20, 30 years' time things will be better. But, obviously that's a big ask.
Your wife had a brilliant theory, I thought, for persuading men to do things they don't want to do, like housework. And what was it again? She rebranded. Yeah, she
rebranded lots of things, because Coke got rebranded as Coke Zero. Diet Coke got rebranded as Coke Zero, which is more or less true. There's a difference. So men still go to and go, well, actually, I think you'll find the ingredients are slightly different. But basically, they've marketed Coke Zero to men. So she said to call hoovering mega carpet warfare. And cunnilingus turbo action tongue hero against the hooded Avenger, or something like that. So that was in her stand-up act, which she kind of never used. She's a very good stand-up. She's now writing children's books, but I hope she'll get back to stand-up, because she was very funny, and is still very funny. But yeah, so it's sort of weird. You would think men, that would be the humiliating. Having it pointed out that you've failed would be the humiliating thing. But I guess there's just something, and where there's lots of problems we all have to cope with at the moment. There's lots of bad stuff going on, so it's not surprising people are sort of doubling down in some ways. But I kind of hope through humour you can. That certainly used to be the way, didn't it? I think if something became humorous and you were aware that you were laughable, you would think, oh well, maybe I should. Yeah, maybe I should affect my behaviour, which must be what socially must be one of the as much as comedians are rebels, I think a lot of comedy is about keeping society together. You either laugh at the ridiculous things that you all have to suffer, and then you're sort of able to face them a bit better when you go back out there again, or through laughter you go, oh, this is what you're doing is ridiculous. You have to change. And we've made strides in big ways over the last 50 years. And sometimes some things are slipping back a little bit, but in terms of attitude toward gay marriage, well, like homosexuality was illegal 50 or 60 years ago, and things are moving in the right direction, so you can make change, I guess, unless you want to actually have revolution and smash things up. It's always going to be a gradual thing, but I think it does get to a tipping point where suddenly, when you look at the 70s and the racism that was on TV in the 70s, and if you put that stuff out now, people would be, most people would be up
you
in
don't
arms.
know.
Would be up in arms. But so things can change.
But that's the thing. Like when you were doing in 2015, I think was it, when you did all the 11 Edinburgh shows that you'd done previously, you restaged them in London.
Yeah,
and. So they were done, what was it, over a series of weekends? You did
I did like 12 shows over 6 weekends. So I did 11 old shows and then a new show at the end. It was rather than going to Edinburgh.
Was there any material in there that didn't date well? You were reading back through it going, oh, that's not going to play well.
Not too much, weirdly. And I think, like, weirdly, there's bits in Hitler Moustache, which is one of my shows I'm proudest about, that I wouldn't do now, I think. And I might have done then just out of, I think the landscape shifted. It was about trying to stop right-wing politics. And I think the landscape shifted that if I did Hitler Moustache now, it would really be interpreted as a different thing. But I also thought, there's bits where I discuss racial epithets and whether they what they mean and whether we should use them and whatever, and so I use some of those words, and I don't think I would do that now. I think mostly it held up, because even the stuff that in my sort of late 30s I did a lot more angry shows, but the again, the focus was on myself. There are lines that you would take out of context that certainly, and there's bits of my act that every now and again people will take out of context and go, oh, but Richard Herring says he's a feminist, but look at this page from his book from 2010. And you go, yeah, well, read the whole book, watch the whole show, and then decide. Because even, sometimes I would use sexist ideas in order to mock myself or in order to make the audience think about that. And if you got to the end of the show, you would see, oh, the real idiot in this show is the character of Richard Herring or whatever this is. So yeah, but there wasn't much. The only show, Someone Like Yoghurt was just so long and so persistent in its desire to just annoy you that I didn't actually have time to do the whole show. But also that was the only show I felt I wish I hadn't made the first half quite as long, and I think it sort of almost took away from the second half with the sort of big yogurt routine, because I'd done 3 or 4 routines that were again about being very persistent about an idea and taking an idea in that kind of Lee and Herring way. Stuart's taken that on a bit further as well. So it was so I think that was the only one I kind of thought, well, I'll take out a bit because I have to, but also because I think the show would be better with the bit out. But I think I more or less did everything. But I did play. I played around with irony a lot. There's stuff from there. I think there's in the 90s I probably did sort of some Ricky Gervais style use of disablest language, thinking it was funny because you're harking back to the playground, and I wouldn't do that now. And I'm an ambassador of scope, and I think. But I always find that interesting when even if I was doing sexist material, which I really don't think we massively did. I'm not saying I'm completely innocent of it, but if I did stuff that was dodgy or sexist, somebody would go, oh, how can he say how can he do a book about feminism when he did this joke about this? You go, well, what do you want? Do you want me to stay being the thing you thought I was? So you'd prefer it if I was still being sexist, or do you want me to change my mind? I guess if they feel like, he's pretending, but he's still the guy who did that thing, that's a different thing. But, I mean, I don't know. I just don't think, I'm not sure that would be a very sustainable way to carry on your life. So it's sort of odd the way, I've always been about, forgiveness and giving people a chance. And I would never cancel anyone, really, I don't think. I don't really understand that impetus to go, I want people to learn. Even when people have done stuff, people have broken the law or whatever, that's a different thing. But if people have had an opinion that's wrong, I think even before I was a father, I thought, I remember when Ron Atkinson, said that awful thing he said about a black footballer off mic and it got picked up. You kind of go, okay, look, that's bad, and he should not say that, and he shouldn't get away with it, but also he should be allowed to learn, and we've got to teach our kids that you will make mistakes. If you look back at our lives, if I look at my teenage diaries, the things I was writing in there about women and race and all sorts of things, you go like, am I held accountable for the views I held as a 16-year-old, or do we learn? Is life a learning process? And and things.
It sort of worries me about people like Lawrence Fox, for instance.
Yeah.
What was he thinking in his diary?
Well, I don't know, but see that is again, it's the impetus that he's done something, he's been criticised, and his impetus is to double down.
Yeah.
And he could easily have just gone, okay, yeah, look, I can see that I'm being a bit silly saying that, or let's have a talk about it, or But he put himself at the head of this crusade, and there's enough people on. The thing with social media, it only takes 20 people either way, I think. If 20 people come and go, well done, mate, I agree with you on that, you'll feel like you've hit a nerve. If 20 people are having a go at you over something, you'll feel like you've really upset lots of people. And I've noticed this. I started muting people over something that I'd said... on Twitter, I said, why don't we just call everyone what they want to be called? If you do that with anyone else, if someone says, I want to be doctor, call them doctor. If someone wants to be called she, then call them she. I didn't even say that much. I just said, why don't you just call everyone what they want to be called? I had so much flack from that, unbelievable amount of flack from people who don't believe that we should. But then I muted the people who were doing it, and it was about 20 people, and it's completely stopped. And so I would have felt like if I hadn't done that, I would have felt like, oh my God, I've done something, by trying to do the most reasonable tweet I've ever done in my life. I'd have said the most inoffensive thing I could have said. Like, be nice to people, call them what we want to be called. Not even referencing transgender people at all, just saying that. It felt like it was a big army of people coming for me, and then I just muted everyone who started talking about toilets.
Yeah.
And it completely went away. So it's, I think that's the thing, is that the vast majority of people don't even really think about this stuff very much. So social media can highlight things, but I think, again, that's not to say people shouldn't express themselves, and it's not to say we can't change things, but it's social media is it highlights those kind of people. Lawrence Fox, I think, again, 15 years ago, if Lawrence Fox had behaved like that, you wouldn't have been able to see him say it anywhere. You'd have been sort of, someone would have taken him. It's like, oh, shut up, mate.
Yeah.
And that would have been the end of it. But it's sort of, we're in a weird position now, because a lot of these people just end up. Again, it goes back to I am obsessed with obsession, and a lot of this stuff is obsessive behaviour. If you just get obsessed in the wrong thing, you can get sucked into some awful worlds if you don't keep a grip on reality as well. So it's worth being a bit of grit in the machine, but it's also you've got to sort of step back and think about what you're doing as well. And I guess the nice thing about this book was actually coming to terms a little bit with. It was always just a flippant, silly thing to do, and it was never actually against International Men's Day, which some people took it as being. But it was nice to sort of look into what International Men's Day was and realise that we could do something. And this International Men's Day, I got everyone to tweet their favourite man and why they thought he was good. And it was honestly one of the most wonderful things I've ever experienced, compared to the other day where I'm being, I'm sort of being a troll on International Men's Day. But to say, let's just be positive. Let's say, who's your favourite guy, and what have they done? And I picked Michael Palin, I think, but lots of people would pick their dads or older brothers, often people who died, or people who'd really inspired them. And that's the shift. If you actually just change the focus of something, you can actually turn a negative thing into a positive thing, which is, I guess, what I was trying to do all the time with this. But I think, up to an extent, to a tiny extent, even though there was lots of positives, I was actually just fueling a negative thing in doing it as well, which again is part of the reason why I think it's nice to move on and let this book speak for itself, I guess. So
you never have to do it ever again.
Well, I don't have to do it again. I can just put a link to the book. There's the answer to
all your problems.
It tells you when it is. And I hope it will. I hope it will go. Obviously, it's difficult with a book to get it to the right people. I've had already a few people saying, "Oh, this has changed my outlook on the way it was." It's just reasonably worked out. It's not really. It's on a side, but it's not like it's a kind of fair and balanced look at it. And I think a lot of what we've done with this subject and the idea of feminism, and I'm not.
Well, what's your top tip then for to sell feminism to a skeptical man, in your life?
I think it's just that that it isn't. I think it isn't. It's about equality. That's all it is. So if you want equality, that's the selling point. Just because it's got femme at the start, you can be a feminist if you want. I wouldn't even necessarily self-describe as a feminist. I'm. It's up to you how you describe. But I have the same end goals, I think, as a feminist. So I'm as close. And some feminists don't like men describing them as feminists, and so you have to think about that. But I think if you're an ally, I think it's just moving towards equality. If that's what you want, if you're worried about male suicide, if you're worried about men being locked up more than women for the same crime, if you're actually genuinely worried about those things, and of course the November the 19th guys aren't worried about those things, because I did scheduled tweets to them all saying, what are you doing today? This is the day you wanted, what are you doing? And none of them are doing anything. If men put the effort into International Men's Day that they put into complaining on International Women's Day, International Men's Day would be the biggest thing in the world. I'm absolutely convinced of it. So if you care, don't be the guy at the birthday party going, when's my birthday? Celebrate. Oh, no one will come to your birthday. Celebrate your birthday, which is International Men's Day. You can celebrate being a man any other day of the year. Just don't do it on March the 8th, or don't do it. You can still do it. Just don't do it. And don't be negative. So it's about positivity and about and I think about realizing. I think the book. The book sums it in 25,000 words. I think the book takes you on the journey quite well. I'm surprised how well it turned out, because it was a difficult thing to write, and it was a difficult thing to be that concise with. But I think by being forced to make it quite a short book, And it's a something like a 2.5 hour audiobook. It's pretty easy
It is, yeah.
It's
Yeah.
basically
And there's extra bits.
There's
in
some
the
extras if
audiobook.
you want to make it longer, yeah. But it is. I see it as my 2020 stand-up show. It's when I listen to it myself, I go, oh, this. I could take out 20 minutes of this, and this is a touring show. I probably won't do it, but it's nice to have a stand-up show. So if you get the audiobook, listen to that. It kind of sums up the arguments, and I think just points you in the right direction. And just have a think about it. Just have a think about why you're doing stuff, the effects of what you're doing. And so just something, and I think again, it's just at the heart of it, it's not that important a thing, it's not that big a deal, but the impetus that's making men ask when's International Men's Day on International Women's Day, and the harm that does to men and women. So it harms International Women's Day and it harms International Men's Day. Basically at the end I say, that's, if you hear someone ask it, just say this, devalues International Women's Day, but it devalues International Men's Day, because it makes International Men's Day just look like a knee-jerk response to International Women's Day, which it isn't. And, so if you look at the history of International Men's Day, it's set up for good reasons. If you look at something like Movember, which I took part in this year, that's a very positive thing. There's a whole month long, don't tell the girls, guys, they'll be furious, that raises loads of money for those exact things that on International Women's Day you're saying no one cares about. It gets more publicity than International Women's Day Movember. So it's just pointing out a few basic facts. And, some men are not going to listen. Some men have made up their mind. But all we need to do is just get enough of the wavering guys going, oh, yeah, I'm a sensible person. And if I do want the things that I say I want... I think there's a lot, there's a lot of men just begrudge their lives. They begrudge maybe a woman has done something bad to them in their lives, or they feel they have. And then they start taking out on everyone, And so they need to look into themselves and work out why they're so angry about women celebrating a day for one day out of 365 days. Why are you angry that women get a day? It's not.
What about you as a dad now? You've got like 2 kids. You got a boy and a girl, according to your Wikipedia.
Wikipedia is correct.
And so, which one's your favourite?
The girl, definitely. Well,
there must be pressure then on you. Well, have you suddenly realised the pressure on dads?
I haven't really.
As a role model, or
I don't think I sort of find that weird when guys suddenly go, oh, now I've got a daughter.
Yeah.
I care about women, because that's sort of weird if you haven't thought about it before. And we've all got mothers, and we've all got sisters or female relatives or friends, hopefully, that are women. So it would be weird, I think, if having a daughter.
I think there's more of an effect whenever you have sons.
Yeah, well, we're conscious. My wife's very strong on this of everything being for everyone, and I think that's really important. My son wanted my daughter's got an Elsa dress from Frozen, and my son wanted an Anna dress from Frozen, so they could play together. And so it's just going, that's fine. Of course it is. Why would it not be? So my son wanted a doll's house because my daughter's got a doll's house, and so he's looking up to his sister and wanting to be like her, and that's fine. He's 3 years old. It doesn't matter if he wants to play with dolls, and nor should it. It's there's still something in you, I think, as a man, and it is ingrained in you that you have to sometimes challenge yourself over the preconceptions you have. But I want him to be happy. He's a pretty happy little kid, and does what he wants, and he's an annoying little shit at times. But I think all those, he'll make his own choices, and I think once they get into school, and it's very hard to be in control of all those things. But I think my daughter came home from school and said, oh, that's a boy's thing about something, and my wife said, no, nothing's for everything's for everyone. And I think it's just to reiterate that, so it's not so the girls know that they can go for anything, but so do boys. So it is, and I think we do need, if you can. I think the thing about equality is if men actually accepted that equality was necessary and made it happen, it wouldn't. The rest of it wouldn't matter. It's up to men.
Men to change.
It's up to men to change. So that's what we need to convince our boys to be better people and more and think less about themselves and be realistic about their tennis abilities. So I think but you're never going to get everything right. Being a parent is a difficult and exhausting process, and you're so, when you're in it, it's so hard to even take a step back and enjoy it, because you're just constantly trying to put out fires and stop them killing each other. And I think you can only just try and do the best you can do. But I think as men we can start making steps in the right direction.
Absolutely. Because I've got a son who's going to university now, and he's going to be 20 in a week. And every so often they say things, and you just sit back, and myself and my wife go, "We've done all right. That's our job here is done."
Well,
my wife goes, "See, all of my worked," and he just says a thing, and it's all good. Mr. Richard, people could do no worse than buy the book and educate themselves, because it's just brilliant. It's very funny. It's very informative. It's eye-opening for lots of different reasons and for lots of different people, I think.
Good. Thank you.
So the problem with men, and to give it its full title, the problem with men and when is International Men's Day and why it matters. You can get it downloaded anywhere. When the shops open again, by the way, you can go in and buy it in a local bookshop.
Buy it in the shops. You can buy it as an ebook. You can buy it as an audiobook. I mean, I think the audiobook's the best, but yeah, if you like the audiobook,
you get a conversation as well at the end.
Yeah, with Deborah Francis White from The Guilty Feminist, who's got some great stuff to talk about in that, and that's another hour on top. So yeah, and a bit of the stand-up routine I did, and so yeah, there's quite a few little bits of extras in there. It's been brilliant.
Well done.
Cheers, man. Thanks, Colin.
Yeah. So thanks for joining us. Thanks again to Richard. There are plenty more happening for the next 4 days during the Out to Lunch Festival. Go on the website, have a look, go on the YouTube channel, see if you can watch any of the things that have been uploaded so far. Hopefully we'll be able to do this in real life next year. Until then, stay strong. All the best. Bye-bye. Thanks.